Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about what is dementia? What is Alzheimer's? So when we use these two terms, I want you to think about dementia as an umbrella. It's an umbrella term. And there are many different types of dementia. There's Lewy bodies dementia, there's cardiovascular dementia, there's frontal temporal dementia, there's Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia. So what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is an irreversible, progressive brain disease that slowly destroys brain cells that control memory, thinking, and judgment, among many other things. Almost 7 million individuals in the United States are living with AD. The greatest risk factor for this disease is age and family history. And there are two types of AD. There's early onset AD, and then there's late onset AD. Early onset AD affects about 5% of the AD population, and this affects individuals 60 years of age or younger. Now, late stage AD affects 95% of AD individuals, and these are individuals who are 65 years of age and older. You can see those two photos, or the one photo on the screen. On your left side, you see a normal brain, and on the right side, you see an Alzheimer's brain. And what you'll notice is that the brain on the right side is smaller due to a loss of nerve cells and a loss of volume in the Alzheimer's brain. AD is one of the costliest societal conditions at over $250 billion annually to healthcare systems. Most individuals requiring home care, they're elderly with dementia. Most individuals with dementia receiving long-term care, guess where they're living? At home. Over 80% of the people who provide care to patients with AD, they're what we call informal caregivers. And Dr. Lee Duncan will talk a little bit more about this term, informal caregivers, later on. So let's talk about the value of caregiving services. To those living in the community with AD, last year, informal caregivers in the United States offered almost $350 billion worth of unpaid care. Caregivers are very challenged by physical, emotional, mental, and financial adversities. And that's as a result directly of providing caregiving services. Informal caregivers, 80% of them are usually cared for. The patients are usually cared for by informal caregivers, and the majority of our caregivers are female. 1/3 of those female caregivers are daughters to the patients who have Alzheimer's disease, and 1/4 of them have their own children in addition to the patients that they're caring for. More than 50% of caregivers provide 4 or more years of unpaid care to patients diagnosed with AD. Female caregivers are a little bit more than 1.5 times, 1.5 times more likely to suffer from depression compared to male caregivers. And those female caregivers are a little bit more than 3 times more likely to suffer anxiety compared to their male counterparts. So we do know that caregiver adversity can result in what we call caregiver burden. What is caregiver burden? Caregiver burden is a multifaceted, multidimensional concept, and it's based on the perception of strain related to the care provided by caregivers. Strain related to the caregiving experience, as I noted earlier, can lead to many adversities, mental, emotional, physical, and financial adversities. So outcomes related to caregiver burden include burnout, emotional exhaustion, decrease in quality of life, physical health issues, and decreased provision of care for those that the caregivers are attempting to provide for. So a lack of caregiver support, what can that lead to? Anxiety, patient neglect, elder abuse, frustrations, distress, depression, and obesity. By the year 2030, it is expected that 75 million people across the globe will be dealing with dementia. An increase in AD will challenge more individuals in their caregiving role. Why is that? We're living longer. And I did say that 80% of AD patients are living at home and being cared for by informal caregivers. So the need to address caregivers and how to best support them is great. And on that note, I want us to think about some of the various aspects of the caregiving role. I want to ask Lisa, if you will. Lisa, can you talk to us about what are non-death losses and secondary losses?
Yes, Karen, thank you. So there are two really important types of non-death loss and grief that we see among caregivers. The first is called ambiguous loss. Ambiguous loss is when we have physical presence but mental absence. So if you notice that you're caregiving somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's and you've lost them as who they used to be and you start grieving, that's something that we expect in the grief therapy world. It's something that we expect among caregivers. There's also this idea of anticipatory grieving. So when you know that the person that you care for and that you love is beginning the process of dying, sometimes that grief process starts even while they're still alive, which can be very disorienting for people. I see some nodding heads, so some of you have experienced that already maybe. The secondary losses are those losses that come after the grief has started. That primary grief has started, and then it's who am I now? What is my role in my family? Am I still a daughter if I've lost my mother? Am I still a parent if I've lost a child? All of these other things that start to come up along the process, those are the secondary losses, and those have to be grieved as well.
Excellent, Lisa. Can you talk to us, tell us what grief is? Can you define that for us?
Yeah, so grief is the experience we have internally after we've experienced some type of a loss. So that internal process, if you start feeling that roller coaster, sometimes I'm okay, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere it hits me and I'm back into that sadness and the intensity of emotion that you feel in missing that person. That's when you know the grief process has begun for you.
Lisa, are there any special needs that caregivers have when it comes to the grief process?
I think the most important thing for people to know when they're experiencing grief as a caregiver is something that I like to call the best friend test. If your best friend came to you and said, here's everything I'm going through, and here's how I'm feeling about that, what would you say to them? Because most of the time, it's pretty different than what we say to ourselves. We have a tendency to be very hard on ourselves, to make ourselves feel guilty, to not have a lot of patience and kindness towards ourselves. But when it's someone else, we tend to be more generous in that way. So the most important thing is to be kind to yourself. And if you feel that there is some more help and support that you need, please don't be afraid to reach out for it. We have a lot of great community resources in Broward County, and there are people who want to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out for support.
Thank you for that, Lisa. And what do you think about planning for grief? Any ideas about that?
That's a wonderful question. So we often do projects with families. One of the big things that comes up after somebody passes away is legacy. How are they going to leave their mark on their family members, in the community? We have such a great opportunity when we're a caregiver to create that legacy while the person is still living, to capture stories, to put their handprint onto a stone to put in the garden, to do different types of meaningful things so that we can plan for the future. And it's a great opportunity to start doing coping for yourself. Start moving, whether it's walking, well, now with this Florida heat, maybe getting in a pool, but lots of breathing exercises and self-care. Start that now while you're a caregiver, before the grief process after the person has passed begins.
Thank you for those comments, Lisa. I want to go on and start talking about how AD is impacting members of diverse communities. We have two experts on the panel, Dr. Duncan. We also have Lisa Peters. They're going to talk to us about some individuals in diverse communities. Lee, I want to start off with you. I used the term earlier, informal caregivers. Can you explain to our audience what the term informal caregivers is about?
Thanks, Karen, and good morning to everybody. When we talk about informal caregiving or caregivers, basically we're talking about, well, I refer to them as family members, and it could be a family member, it could be a very, very close friend, but it's basically somebody that is unpaid and generally has a personal relationship with the care recipient, the person, the loved one. So when we talk, I wanted to distinguish that because there's times when we talk about what I call in-home service aides. Sometimes people refer to them as caregivers as well. So I want to make that distinction that as an informal caregiver, we're talking about family caregivers, family members providing care for other family members, generally unpaid, as opposed to what we call the formal caregiving of, aides or HHAs, CNAs, PCAs, etc.
Thank you for that, Dr. Duncan. So we know that the Black community is twice as likely than other communities to develop AD. The Hispanic Latinx community is 1.5 times more likely to suffer from this disease. Can you tell me if the Black community is aware of this phenomena?
Another question that I think obviously definitely needs to be put out there. Generally, I would say no. The members of the audience that are from the Black community today, one presumes that they are aware to some degree of how Alzheimer's is affecting us in our community. But generally, my research has indicated that we tend to take care of our own because they're just our family members that we take care of. Do we recognize Alzheimer's? Again, my research indicates that we don't recognize Alzheimer's as much as we should do. We're certainly not aware that it's progressing fastest in our community. And we generally look at the conditions or the symptoms of Alzheimer's as just someone growing old, senility. And we tend to, how can I put it, take it for granted or in denial to some degree of the symptoms of our loved ones. We're not looking for the help that is out there for people who have Alzheimer's. We're just trying to take things on our own. So the ways that Alzheimer's affects the loved one. Obviously, so maybe some of the people here are aware of that, but it's harder to take care of somebody who has Alzheimer's than someone who just needs care with, physically. The fact that it's growing or increasing fastest in the black community means that there are more caregivers in our community that are having to take care of people with excessive needs. And Ms. Karen has already mentioned some of the issues when it comes to taking care of someone, the levels of stress, the levels of strain, the levels of burden, the financial issues, the physical issues, the emotional issues that arise when you are taking care of someone. And yes, my research and the research has indicated that within our community we're going to do it, but I think that there needs to be more research in terms of the effect that is having on the members of our community and caregivers in general, because it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you in the ways that Ms. Karen has indicated, and it needs to be addressed.
Absolutely, Lee. Thank you for that. We know that this issue is really hitting all communities, some harder than others. But again, informal caregivers are certainly in demand now. They will be in demand even more so in the future. Lee, if you would just quickly talk to us, I know as a human services supervisor with Broward County Elderly and Veteran Services, can you just quickly highlight to what extent are community members aware of and utilize formal services?
Yeah, again, just to continue, again, in our community, we tend to take care of our own, and that's generally because we don't trust formal services. I can go into the history of discrimination and legacy of racism, etc., and the traumas that has caused us in our community. So, generally speaking, we're reluctant to go and search for formal or official type of care. Okay. I'm here today, and one of the things that we are all here today is, as Miss Lisa indicated, there are services out there.
Yes.
And, we do need to, as Ms. Karen's indicated, because of what caregiving can do to us as caregivers, we do need help. We do need the assistance. So, it cannot be done just by one person. So
yes.
We do need help.
Yes.
So
yes.
We do need to reach out to that help.
And we do, we're going to talk a little bit in just a few minutes more about those services. Lee, just before we leave you, can you speak to professionals, our colleagues, and the need for recognizing our caregivers? Can you speak very quickly to that?
Okay, yeah, one of the crucial things I believe is that when it comes to, again, people in our community and caregivers in general, I'll go that far, is that there's a concept that I like to use, which is cultural humility, which I think as professionals need to apply across the board a little bit more, which basically refers to listening or giving an arena, a format or a platform, I should say, to our caregivers. We need to listen to what our caregivers are trying to tell us. We need to give voice to our caregivers and hear. Some of my caregivers that are here today, you'll hear me constantly say that we need to hear from you in order to know what to do for you. So yes, we as professionals need to facilitate giving our caregivers that voice to tell us what their experiences are, so that we can provide care or services that address your experiences.
So would it be fair to say then, Lee, that caregivers need to see themselves as caregivers, and that professionals need to also recognize when caregivers show up in their offices, caregivers need to be identified, fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, that's, is the crucial point that I'd like to convey today, is that, again, my research has indicated that as far as a family member, we tend to take care of a family member because they are a member of our family. We don't see it as a caregiving role per se. We see it as just taking care of another family member. I mean, and again, my crucial point I'd like to make today is that, you know, there are going to be changes when you're taking care of someone. There's going to be adjustments that you're making. And sometimes you're not aware of the full extent of those changes and those adjustments. I think we need to become a little bit more conscious of the fact that as much as you love your family member, there is going to be a change in your role. And, you know, you need to kind of embrace that so that you can then adjust your life so that you can get the help that you need as a caregiver.
Absolutely. Thank you for those comments, Lee. Lisa, talk to us about some of the fears that an individual from the LGBT community, these seniors, talk to us about some of their fears. Maybe they're thinking about who's going to provide for me. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the biggest fears that LGBT seniors has is who is going to take care of me. Many of the seniors have been abandoned by their biological families. They do have chosen families, but as they age and as their chosen family members pass on, they are really fearful of, you know, who is going to take care of me? I don't have family, and I want to be able to be true to who I am. And am I going to be able to find somebody, maybe not an informal caregiver, but a paid caregiver? And am I going to find somebody who is accepting of me and who I am? Many have spent their lives you know, trying to, for the rights of LGBT seniors, you know, the right to be who they are. They don't want to go back into the closet. And that's one of their biggest fears, is that they're going to have to stop being their authentic selves in order to feel safe, especially in their home with a caregiver who comes in and takes care of them.
So on that note, speak to us also about how a member from the LGBT community, these seniors, how can they be sure that a paid caregiver will be accepting of them?
That's a great question, and it's a big fear for many of the seniors. There are some trainings out there. There's an organization called SAGE that is a national organization, and they specifically go around to provide specialized training, culturally competent training to facilities and to organizations, home health agencies, and they go and they do these trainings in order for their caregivers to understand what LGBT is, who those people are, and then just basically teaching them to how to be culturally competent and how to treat them so they are not they don't feel discriminated in especially in their homes. They get very nervous. They have a home health aide that comes into the house, and they want to know that the picture on the wall of themselves and their husband, you know, two men, that might be in an intimate picture, and that they don't react so that they're now uncomfortable in their own home.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. The last thing I want to know from you, can you give us an idea of what are some of the obstacles that these seniors may be facing?
One of the, for the LGBT caregivers, one of the biggest obstacles is being able to provide for the person that they're caring for. There is, you know, the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, and that provides for leave for family members, but when you are caregiving for somebody who is not a family member in the traditional sense and is a chosen family, unless they're or where they work is very accepting and can extend that leave to them, many of them are not afforded that that leave, and that's very stressful to them because we all know in caregiving that you are going to need time sometimes when a loved one is in the hospital, when a loved one needs to be taken to and from the doctor, they are recuperating from surgery or whatever the need is. So we all know how important that time is, and so things like that is really an obstacle for caregivers, LGBT caregivers.
Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. And again, these are issues that are affecting informal caregivers in general, right? So we'll talk more about some of the resources that caregivers can tap into a little bit in a few minutes. I'd like to move on at this time, and I'd like to talk with our caregiver extraordinaire, Mr. John Strader, who happens to be one of the board of members at the Alzheimer's Association. John, can you talk to us about the caregiver experience?
Thank you, Dr. Karen. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'll try my best. I feel a little bit like an amateur. I'm up here, a bunch of professionals beside me, but I'll do my best. Thanks for being here today. And my name is John Strader. I'm a volunteer member, as Karen said, of the Southeast Alzheimer's Association Board of Directors, as well as a member of the Alzheimer's Impact Movement National Leadership Society. And that's a big mouthful, but more importantly than all of that, I'm the caregiver for my wife of 44 years, Lisa, who is in the very advanced stages of this disease. Lisa is one of 48,000 people here in Broward County that is currently living with dementia. And she first began showing symptoms around 2014. And reflecting on the events of the last 10 years, I suppose there are a lot of things that I wish I'd done differently. Hopefully by sharing my experience with you this morning, this may help you avoid some of my missteps. Looking back on it, I think my earliest mistake was denying to myself that anything was wrong. The early signs were subtle. Lisa would have trouble finding a word or a phrase, finishing a written sentence, and her grammar and writing skills were always meticulous. So I thought, well, maybe she's just starting to deteriorate a little bit with age. But over time, she became more and more unsure of herself and not as forthcoming in company. She began to withdraw. And I know now that was because she was having increasing difficulty with following the conversation. One of the aspects of Alzheimer's is that no two people decline in the exact same way. Although there are often similarities, some hallmark behaviors, like Forrest Gump's box of chocolates, you never quite know what you're going to get. Some people recognize and accept that they're having issues with their cognition and their abilities. Others resist the evidence until they can no longer deny the reality of it. And still others maintain complete denial for as long as they can still do so. Unfortunately, Lisa was in this last group. She had a lifelong distrust of doctors, and as a result, she refused to see anybody who could diagnose her condition. Additionally, her increasing confusion led to extreme levels of agitation, paranoia. She often thought I was stealing from her or that other people were hiding her purse, taking her jewelry. It's probably familiar to a lot of you here in the room. And she refused continually to see a doctor, and if I asked her to, her temper would flare up, and it was impossible to even have a discussion without her becoming very agitated and upset. This continued until 2019, when I could no longer leave her alone in the house and her anxiety level would send her into a panic whenever I tried to leave, even to get groceries. I finally retired from my profession in 19 at that point in order to take care of her full time. At the beginning of 2020, I was able to find a full-time caregiver to help me with Lisa's needs, which were ever increasing at that point. And Heather Mahoney remains with us to this day as a true friend who's dedicated to managing Lisa's constant needs and welfare requirements. That's my story in brief. And I'll tell it to you to give you some context for the tips and advice that were promised by Dr. Karen here. So here goes. My first tip would be, as soon as you believe that your loved one is beginning to show any of the warning signs of dementia, do not ignore them. Do not deny their existence. Sometimes more easily said than done, but with some of the newly FDA-approved treatment options now available for the first time, every moment is valuable and every delay is costly. So, get a diagnosis as early as possible. I won't go into the details here because you're going to be hearing from some pretty qualified dementia care experts and dementia medical experts here a little bit later on this morning. So I'm not going to go into the medical details. But second, educate yourself about the disease. Really important. Its challenges, its strategies for dealing with it. Read and speak with medical specialists and find reliable, accurate, and properly vetted sources of information, because there is a ton of misinformation out there all over the internet, and you really need to vet your information and be sure that it's accurate. Third, once a diagnosis is made, as the previous panel alluded to, work with your loved ones to make sure that the plans and arrangements are put together for their legal and financial affairs to be in order, since at some point they won't be able to manage them anymore. Make sure that someone has legal power of attorney for this purpose. I know the last panel went over this in detail, so I won't belabor it. In my case, I was unable to obtain this because of Lisa's attitude. And as a result, I had to ultimately go to the Broward County courts, obtain a lawyer, and obtain legal guardianship over Lisa, which is not something you want to be doing. It's a very complicated procedure, requires annual reportings to the court, and is really, really unnecessary if you can at all avoid it. Next, seek out and establish a support network. You're going to need it. Your support network can include additional caregivers, other family members, to provide you with free time so that you can take care of your own needs. An elder law attorney to help with legal and estate issues, and local service providers, social service providers, to help you with available resources that can be of assistance. Then, little plug for Alzheimer's Association here, find a local Alzheimer's support group. We're sitting here in Broward County's biggest Alzheimer's support group this morning, so they're really valuable. These groups can provide you with an understanding space to share your feelings and emotions with others that are walking the same path that you are, and they're excellent sources of practical knowledge and advice from those who've already had the experience that you're now going through. Another very useful resource is a local adult daycare facility near where your loved one can find companionship with others going through similar cognitive challenges and participate in constructive engagement and recreational activities while supervised by qualified caregivers. These ADCs can provide you with precious respite time to take care of your own needs and necessities. If there is not a dementia daycare center near you, in your community, then approach your local community leaders and political leaders and ask what they're doing to make these centers available in your area. very importantly, don't forget to take care of yourself. However you can manage it, you must absolutely maintain your mental and physical health so that you don't become a collateral casualty of the Alzheimer's journey. Finally, allow yourself your emotions. At various times, you'll inevitably feel frustration, sadness, guilt, anger, loss, and even humor. This is all part of the Alzheimer's journey. It's a roller coaster ride, so accept your feelings, embrace them, and more importantly, forgive yourself for them. The reason you feel these things is because you care about your loved one and you're doing the very best to help them with their struggle. Always remember, you're not alone. Just look around the room this morning. You have plenty of company to support you. Thanks so much for allowing me to share.
Thank you so much, John, for the information you just shared. I see you. I see you. I see all of the informal caregivers. And that's why we're here, to share information so that we can support you. John, you said so many good things, but two things I want to pick up on. You talked about the need for a diagnosis early, right? So if you have a loved one who seems to be forgetting things, we all, as we age, sometimes we forget things. But if an individual forgets what a set of keys are for, car keys are for, or if an individual has a cell phone in their hand and they have absolutely no idea what the cell phone is for, that's an issue. And so what you would expect to do is talk with your primary care physician first, bring those symptoms up to that physician, nurse practitioner, and then expect to see a neurologist for a final diagnosis. So thank you for that. John, you also spoke about the significance of self-care. Well, research clearly shows that the well-being of the caregiver directly affects the well-being of the patient. So you've got to take care of yourselves. Lastly, research also indicates that the more you know about the disease and why some of these behaviors are showing up, the better you will be equipped to manage your own feelings about the symptoms and behaviors that the Alzheimer's dementia patient is exhibiting. So thank you again for that. So we've already gone over identifying the various aspects of the caregiver role, how Alzheimer's disease is impacting diverse communities, experiences of caregiving, tips from a caregiver. I want now to invite Liz to give us some information regarding resources available from the Area Agency on Aging, Broward County. Liz, would you talk to us about the agency, and is that agency the same as the ADRC?
Yes, it is. The Area Agency on Aging is the overall body that is in charge of funding and planning and advocacy for seniors 60 and older in Broward County. We also provide services directly, and our services are provided through the Aging and Disability Resource Center. That is our direct service arm. So that is where our helpline is housed, where our health and wellness classes are, and where our caregiver supports are, as well as the entryway into the statewide Medicaid managed care program.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little more about the programs and the services available to caregivers and how exactly to access those services?
Absolutely. It's kind of a little longer description, so bear with me. We start with the Aging and Disability Resource Center, and most of you are aware of it. Our phone number is in the brochure that you have on the program today. But what you do is you would call into the helpline number. We have wonderful, compassionate, and caring staff that are going to listen to where you are and what it is that you're looking for, what kind of supports it is that you need. Because one of the things that we realized early on is that each of us, even though we're dealing with the same disease or the same issues, are individual and our situation is individual. So they're going to ask you questions about who you are, who you're caring for, and what it is that you're calling for. And it's not to give you a hard time, it is truly to find out how we can best help you. So our information and referral specialists start with where you are and where you're at. Some people are not looking for services themselves, they're just looking for who can they call to get the help from, or who could they hire to come in and assist them. And for those people, we just give the information that they're asking for. For someone who's looking for additional services and supports or our funded services, we have approximately 9 different funding streams, so we're going to ask a lot of questions of you to make sure that we're meeting your needs. So they will screen you, and the screening is an assessment. And one thing I want to tell you very carefully is that the assessment asks a lot of questions. Sometimes I feel like we're poking people for information, but it really is to find out where you are and how you're coping. So we're going to ask you what you can do, what your loved one can do, what they can't do, what do they need help with. And the best thing I can tell you is this is not a judgment in any way, shape, or form, but we cannot help you if you're not honest with us as to what it is that you need. So I can tell you all kinds of stories about how people have managed, and as long as everybody's comfortable with the service that they're doing and the love that they're giving to their loved ones, there's not a wrong way. There's not a wrong way to help them bathe. There's not a wrong way to help them dress or to shower or to walk around the neighborhood. It is what works for you and how you do it. So we're going to ask you, first of all, to be very, very honest. A lot of our funding requires that we work with the frailest people first. So if you're telling us you got this covered, you're good, you don't need any help, you're going to be at the bottom of the waiting list. And so we don't want to discourage you. There are waiting lists for a lot of the services, but we want you to be honest as to what your need is, because then we can better address it. So once you've talked to the information and referral specialists and gone through the screening, they will tell you the different services that you may be qualified for. And they're going to ask you to decide which ones you want to move forward with. Because again, we're trying to tailor this to your needs. So they're going to talk to you about Alzheimer's Disease Initiative. They're going to talk to you about Older Americans Act funding. They're going to talk to you about community care for the elderly, possibly home care for the elderly, and the statewide Medicaid managed long-term care services. Along the way, there are all kinds of other services under the Older Americans Act umbrella. We really try to tell people we really want to meet you when you're healthy and you don't need as much help. And so we have senior centers around the county that offer socialization and recreation and fun trips, as well as counseling and support groups of every kind. So what we want to do is make you comfortable with who we are and know that we are there to help you. As you continue through your aging journey, we then start to match you with services that are more appropriate to where you are now, whether it's for in-home services or adult daycare. I will tell you, if you're able to get your loved one out and about, adult daycare is one of the best places for them to be, because it provides them not only with a safe space, but with socialization. For those, we do ask that you are not only, you have a doctor's verification that you do not have any communicable diseases. So normally you're screened for TB to make sure that everyone that you are going to be in contact with on a day-to-day basis are safe also. And that's pretty much the only entry into the daycare. You have to have some frailty or need direction, and you must be 60 and older. So that's pretty much an easy entry point. If you're at in-home services, again, you have to have a frailty or a need for assistance with your activities of daily living. And then the services that are offered are really unique to you. There is not a set care plan for anyone. So you would go through the screening, and if that's a service you want, you would go on the waiting list. When you are released from the waiting list, a case manager will call you, come out and do an assessment at your home, and put together a plan of care with you and your caregiver so that you have the services that you need at that point. And then there's a reassessment every 6 months so that we can make sure that as your needs change, the service options that you're offered are changed. The statewide Medicaid managed care option is for those people who have a nursing home level of care but want to reside in the home. And so what we look at is all of the different in-home services that are there. So we've got everything from personal care to homemaking to respite care in the home to consumable medical supplies to home-delivered meals. But one of the most fantastic programs that we've added recently to our array of services is the T-Care Navigator program. And it is a tailored caregiver empowerment program which starts with a quiz or a survey, I should say. It's not really a quiz because there's no wrong answers. And it asks where you are, what your fears are, what your concerns are, and where you feel burdened in your life so that we can tailor the care that you're looking for. So if you're a little hesitant and you're not 100% sure as to what it is that you'd like or that you really need or what would be most helpful, this program is really great for you because it helps walk you through the process. So once you complete the survey, then a counselor goes over it with you, and that counselor coordinator will help you by providing resources and referrals to services and follow up with you to make sure that you made the connections and that you've gotten through the process. And they continue to follow up with you to make sure that you and your loved one are both doing well. And
Awesome, Liz. Thank you for that information. So I heard, in a nutshell, 2 main points. I heard individualized care plan, right? Everyone's journey is not the same, so at the AAABC, you're able to provide individualized care plans. I also heard something that John spoke about, which is respite. And research indicates that those who take advantage of respite care for their loved ones do well. Informal caregivers do well. They get the opportunity to go see the dentist if they need to, go take a walk in the park if you need to, right? Thank you so much for that information. John, I want to go back to you because I do know that the Alzheimer's Association also has great resources. Can you talk to us about the resources at the Alzheimer's Association?
Sure, Dr. Karen, I welcome that. The Alzheimer's Association was founded in 1980, and it was founded basically to advocate for the rights and the needs of those facing Alzheimer's and dementia. What began as a grassroots movement has now a nationally recognized nonprofit organization with local chapters in all 50 states and U.S. territories. Today, we are the largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research, spending over $100 million annually to support projects to help discover ways to slow down and the advance and ultimately cure this terrible disease. Many of you know us best from our annual walks to end Alzheimer's. These walks are held every year in over 650 communities nationwide, and they help us raise awareness and, very importantly, money to help fund our mission. In addition, though, the Alzheimer's Association has something called the Alzheimer's Impact Movement. That is our affiliated political action committee. And in that organization, we continually advocate with our national, state level political leaders for their support and for their adoption of our legislative and financial priorities, both in Congress and in the state houses throughout the United States. This year, our federal requests for research funds, caregiver support programs, public educational programs to raise awareness about the disease and newly available treatments, and to develop a national strategy to better manage the challenges of dealing with what is best described as a national health care crisis, amounts to over $4 billion. I spend a lot of time doing that, both in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C., and it's very, very satisfying because we have a lot of allies on both sides of the political aisle. Our advocacy is a totally bipartisan effort. Since Alzheimer's doesn't really care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And we're proud of the fact that we have political support on both sides of the aisle who support our priorities. In fact, the Alzheimer's Association members wear so much purple, as you probably noticed up here on the panel today, and certainly me, because it's not a red issue or a blue issue. And when you mix red and blue together, you get purple.
I love that.
Finally, but certainly not least, we've developed and are currently operating an extensive list of dementia caregiver support programs and resources, both nationally and at the local community levels. These programs include a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week national hotline where people can call and get access to trained professionals that can help answer their questions or assist them in dealing with the challenges of caring for their loved ones with dementia. Translation services are also available for those whose first language isn't English. We also maintain an extensive website, alz.org, simple to remember. This helps provide helpful information on brain health, recognizing the warning symptoms and stages of Alzheimer's, and gives access to our community resource pages, which list individuals, businesses, and professional specialists in their local areas that can provide necessary help and support for them and their families. The website also provides access to our community bulletin board, where people can network with other caregivers to discuss their challenges and perhaps gain valuable insights and strategies for dealing with the many day-to-day issues that those caring with someone with dementia inevitably face. Finally, we offer community-based in-person support groups, smaller versions of what's going on today, where caregivers can gather in a welcoming atmosphere to share their experiences, challenges, frustrations, anger, sadness, as well as numerous humorous moments at times, and to gain valuable insights and advice from those who may be further along on the journey. While there are many dedicated full-time professionals who work for the association and are devoted to the mission of finding a cure and assisting those affected, many of the day-to-day efforts at the local level are carried out by a legion of passionate volunteers. Without these thousands of volunteers who show up at events, help with our fundraising efforts, assist with our various program offerings, our work wouldn't be possible. I myself am one of those volunteers, And I will tell you that it is one of the great joys of my life to be part of this effort. So, in conclusion, I want to thank you all for being here today and for your love and commitment to those you care for. And I urge you to reach out and form a relationship with your Alzheimer's Association. We also have a table set up in the lobby for those who want to explore further. We're here to help, and of course, quick sales pitch here. We could always use some more volunteers. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you again for the information. Yes. So, again, you gave great information. I had the privilege of going to Tallahassee, I think it was a couple of months ago, and I want you to know that our local policymakers, they're very interested in the plight of the caregiver. They're very interested in how Alzheimer's disease and other dementias are affecting our society. On a national level, there is HR 3579, which is the Raise Family Caregiver Act. Look it up. Governments know that you are important, and there are so many resources out there for you. Take a look at HR 3579. Finally, we would like to talk with Attorney Heidi. Attorney Heidi, can you explain the eligibility criteria for the VA and attendance benefits and discuss veterans' most common challenges when qualifying for benefits? I know you're going to speak to us about all the resources at the VA for veterans. Can you start there?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, Karen. So obviously I'm here to talk more about the financial situation that caregivers deal with. So in addition to dealing with the emotional side that you deal with and all the stuff that everybody's been talking about, there's also the concern about how do you pay for all of this care? And that can just lay an additional heavy burden on people. Like, how do I get care in the home? How do I pay for the daycare? How do I pay for the different resources that I need? How do I actually, for those informal caregivers that quit their jobs and now still have to take care of their own families, how can they possibly get paid? Because there is a way to get them paid as well. So just so that you know, I mean, I'm here to talk about VA benefits, but there is really also some great benefits under Medicaid, and that's also your statewide managed care system. So when they talk about their statewide managed care system, you're really talking about Medicaid and the programs under that. But as far as the VA is concerned, so VA has a specific program that we called Aid in Attendance, and it's really there for your wartime veterans and or their surviving spouses. It's one of the few benefits that are there for the surviving spouses as well. And basically what that benefit does is it pays a dollar amount directly to the veteran and or their spouse, depending on who needs the care and how much care they need. The requirements are that, number one, you have to be a wartime veteran. What does that mean? That means that you have to have served as an active service, so unfortunately reserves does not count. But you have to have had active service during an eligible wartime period. What I find a lot in my practice is that people either think they do have service, or what I find a lot more is that they think they don't, and they actually have served at least one day during that wartime. So just don't take it for granted that, oh yeah, my father served in Korea or whatever, and he is now eligible, or oh no, he didn't serve. You really need to know what the dates are and check with the dates, because in addition to just serving in active service, they have to serve at least 90 days consecutively, but only one of those days has to be during that wartime period. So it could either be at the beginning or the end. The next criteria is that you have to basically be discharged any way other than dishonorably. And I have been doing this for a very long time, and I've only come out with one person that was discharged dishonorably. And Unfortunately, the family didn't know what he did. I was really kind of curious, but we couldn't find out what he actually did to get dishonorably discharged. But even, I want you to know, even if somebody is dishonorably discharged, there is a way around that as well. So they have to have been discharged anyway other than dishonorably. The next criteria is basically you have to medically need the program. So what does that mean? For VA, it means that you have to need care, or you have to meet or have requirements of 2 ADLs. And I know we've been talking about activities of daily living. Those are your bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, and/or eating. So you have to need help with 2 or more of those for the VA benefit to kick in. And then the final one is the financial need. And this is another one where we see a lot of eligibility, a lot of issues with veterans and their surviving spouses because they feel they don't qualify. So in order to qualify for the VA aid and attendance benefits, you have to meet the income and the asset part. The asset is that you can have no more than $154,000, a little bit more than that, in assets. Just like Medicaid, though, it does exclude your house, it excludes family vehicles, and it excludes prepaid burials that are irrevocable. So everything else does count. Now, I will tell you that between Medicaid and VA, there are some differences in the rules of like how you treat retirement accounts and things like that. So for VA, it is everything else does count. So you have to have under $154,000 as a household. In addition, your gross monthly income has to be outweighed by your unreimbursed medical expenses. And this is where the most misinformation happens. I will get a lot of people that will tell me, oh, I don't qualify for the VA aid and attendance benefits because my income is too much. But what they don't do and what they don't understand is that you deduct your unreimbursed medical expense from that gross monthly income, and that is called IVAP, or income for VA purposes. And that is what the VA looks at to determine whether or not you qualify. So those are the requirements in order to get qualified for the benefit. Once you are qualified for the benefit, you do submit the application. I'm going to be honest with you, it is not a user-friendly application. There is a lot of pieces to it. Takes the VA quite a few months to approve your application. They do pay retroactively, but the veteran or the surviving spouse has to be alive at the time of approval. So if it takes 6 months or 7 months, and unfortunately your veteran dies during that time period, you do not get the benefit. So it's really important to start that process early.
Thank you, Heidi. Hence the need for an early diagnosis, right?
Absolutely.
So when you see those symptoms, you're going to go first to your primary care physician and then expect to get a diagnosis from who? The neurologist, correct? Or the geriatrician. Thank you. So Heidi, can you talk to us about the role of virtual services? And
Sure. So in my world right now, I am working for a company called VetAssist. And what we are noticing is that the cost, and maybe you're noticing this also, is the cost of home health care is going up. And the cost of a caregiver is skyrocketing. So it's becoming more and more challenging for families to be able to pay for caregiving. And so that hence why you're getting the more informal caregivers staying at home, right? They can't afford the cost. I mean, here in Florida, it's, still relatively affordable, but you start going into states like California and some of these other states, and it is just not affordable to bring in a professional caregiver in your home. And if you do, you still want to make sure sometimes you can't get as much caregiving as you need in the home because you can't afford it. So what is out there? There are different virtual programs, virtual things that can help you with caregiving in your home. For example, one of the programs that we offer is called Smart Companion. Smart Companion is an Alexa-type system that has HIPAA, thank you, it's HIPAA compliant, where maybe your parent is living in another state, or for example, my father just recently fell and he lives in Jacksonville, and we want to make sure that he's safe. Well, I don't live in Jacksonville, obviously, so I want to make sure that that if he does fall again, what's going to happen with him? How is he going to know? We happened to be lucky that my father fell close enough to his phone to be able to yell, hey, Siri, please call my son. If not, he could be laying there for hours. What the Alexa program or what the Smart Companion program does is it allows him in the household to have been able to yell anywhere, hey, Alexa, I've fallen, and it would have called a response team. So there's a lot of technology out there, a lot of technology that's coming up, because the cost of having a home health person in your home 24/7 is exorbitant. And unfortunately, whether you get qualified for Medicaid or VA, it's not going to pay for all of it. And just so everybody knows that if you are a wartime veteran or a surviving spouse, you can qualify for both the Medicaid program and the aid and attendance program at home or in an assisted living facility. So you can get both of those benefits to help pay for that care.
Excellent. And I agree with you. You must take advantage of technology. This is the way our world is going. And taking advantage of technology provides greater access to all of us for informal caregivers to receive their own therapy if needed, and also for the patient to receive care.
And one of the biggest challenges with the technology is that we're dealing with a population, seniors, that are afraid of technology, right? They think the Alexa is going in their home and all of a sudden everybody's going to hear all of their conversations or things like that. So it's something that we have to embrace as caregivers to be able to show. I mean, I remember trying to show my dad how to do the VH, whatever, and it took him 5 days and written instructions on how to just hit play. So I get it that technology can be frightening when you're dealing with this age population. So we have to embrace it and understand that it's going to be the way of the future.
Awesome. And I want to echo what you said, Heidi. I had a patient once who came to me. She was incredibly stressed out, depressed, anxious. She was taking care of her husband. And in the course of conversation, that patient mentioned to me that her husband was a vet. And I said, wait a minute, do you know that there's a possibility that you have access to all of these great resources? And she told me that absolutely not. She didn't believe that. Long story short, she went to the VA and she was able to access many different resources, including at the end, long-term care. So thank you. And do you want to let us know where we should start to access the VA services?
Yes, of course. So one other thing I want to say before I do say that, because I did mention that you as a caregiver or your informal caregivers can get paid in order to take care of your loved one, and that's a really important thing to know. Under the VA, like I said, unreimbursed medical expenses can be outweighed. In order to qualify, you have to have unreimbursed medical expenses outweigh your gross monthly income. With the proper documentation, you can actually pay your child you can't pay a husband and wife, they won't do that. But if you have a child that's taking care of, or a daughter, son, that's helping you take care of your loved one or taking care of you, you can actually pay them and have that classified as an unreimbursed medical expense to be taken so that the VA will then pay you on top of that the benefit. So just so you know that. And also under the statewide managed care system or Medicaid, there is participant-directed programs where you also can get paid as a caregiver for your loved one. So there are ways that if you're taking care of a parent, that you can get paid for your caregiving services. Not a lot, but you can get paid for something.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So at this time, I want to thank all of these experts in sharing information with us today. And we are about to go on to the question and answer period. So at this time, we'll take some questions. Do you need the microphone? Okay. So the question is, what's the program and what's the title of the program at the AAABC?
Which one, Marcia? T-Care. It is a navigator program that assists a caregiver through all of the. So it's just the letter T, care? Yep, T like Tom, and then care. You're quite welcome.
Thank you, Liz. And what you're going to notice, too, that these navigator positions, if you will, are becoming very popular. I've just taken on a role at Florida Atlantic University where I will be doing the patient navigation for our dementia care individuals. I see this at CMS also. People know that this is much needed work. Another question? Oh, do we have the microphone?
Yeah,
okay.
I have the microphone.
There we
Hi.
go.
The question is I have a parent up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my dad did serve wartime, and he received, I don't know what type of VA benefit she's receiving, if at any. Do you guys have any services through the VA to assist her to explain the services of like any type of either a call button or Alexa, anything with electronics? Because my family up there are not the best on the electronics, logistically getting up there to try to do it, and it's going to be a long-term thing. Do they have people that actually volunteer to go into homes and explain, well, here's the help button, the call button, because we even bought the call button. She had it for like a couple of months, never used it. She returned it. So it's like a no-win situation, but actually people either to be employed or volunteer, they could use services.
Lee or Heidi,
technology.
can you address that?
Do you want me to take it for a second? I can tell you just under our particular program, again, I am with Veterans Home Care. I'm general counsel to them and the Vet Assist program. Our program offers what we call Smart Companion or I think it's called Vet Assist Companion. They actually will go set it up for you. And yes, we do have training on how to use it. It's very easy though. It's like an Alexa where you say, hey Alexa, something has happened. I know that for our program, and I also get that, listen, my father also has the necklace, right? And of course he wasn't wearing it at the time he fell, which is the biggest issue, right? Or I got him a watch, I got him a necklace. I'm like, but we were just lucky. We were lucky. So yes. We do offer that kind of training, but this is a particular program that we offer as the company.
And just to speak to that too, getting our seniors to embrace technology. So I bought both of my parents smartwatches, and they're still sitting in the boxes. So.
We have another question.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, very briefly. My husband was diagnosed with dementia in 2022, and he still is in denial. He failed twice in September last year, and when that happened, he got very sick. So my life took a turn. I mean, I had no idea. My life just changed. And during that time, I went through a very stressful, I was like just too overwhelmed. From the top of my head to the sole of my feet, I was in pain because I didn't know how to deal with that. It was back and forth to the doctor, but I got very little help. And God bless those who are getting help and who does help. My husband didn't qualify for anything. Everything I cried out for, they would take me through all these interviews and get to the end, and then they'll say, well, how much is your income? Well, he doesn't qualify for Medicaid. So it went on and on for months until I just got so frustrated. I got sick. I mean, just so many things happened. And so that being said, because of what I'm going through and have gone through, I know what it is for a caregiver. And I've always told my children that, if that time comes, you got to have money or you got to have Medicaid. At this time with my husband, I have no support from his family. It's just myself. And thank God for Easter Seal. They came in at the right time, and I was able to put him in daycare for a few hours a day. That helped me a lot. But mentally, I've gone through a whole lot. Emotionally, I went through a whole lot. it just brings tears to my eyes because I have not been able to get the help that I needed. And again, because what I'm going through, I do want to, we're going to have to move from where we live. We're going to have to move to Georgia. So I hope to start something there to help us caregivers. I was not able to go back to work because I had to care for him. It's just been a very difficult time. So would that be anyone I can talk to get something started in Georgia where we're going to be moving? It's a very small town.
I definitely want to thank you for sharing your experience. I think that you spoke for many people here. Is that fair to say? The stress that you feel, the anxiety, the depression. So thank you for sharing your reality.
What I would do is reach out to the Area Agency on Aging in Southern Georgia. We are nationally, there are over 504 in the United States, and their programs may have little different names, but they have a wonderful caregiver program. They have the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregivers there in Georgia. So reach out and explain your situation, and they should reach out and give you some supports. There are also some health and wellness classes like Savvy Caregiver that actually work with caregivers and the burdens that they're dealing with and give them ways to help de-stress their life and other tools. So there are always things out there. Are you at the Easter Seals in Pembroke Pines?
Yes.
Okay, if you reach out to Anselma, she can connect you through with our health and wellness and the different support programs through there. And we can try and help you while you're still here, okay?
Awesome, awesome. And I know that at alz.org, you can access many of the caregiver support groups and other resources there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, reach out to your local Alzheimer's Association up there in Georgia. They'll help you.
Yeah. And I think, Lisa, you were going to
Yeah, I'd like to add to that as well. We're so fortunate to have these different organizations that provide so much wonderful support and education. But I'd also like to say, don't be afraid to reach out for therapy if you feel that you need it. We have a therapy practice. We take a lot of insurance. We have student interns who offer free to low-cost counseling. Don't be afraid of therapy. I think there's a lot of stigma attached to it, but when you're a caregiver and you need that person who you can let all these feelings out to, who's not a family member, who's not a friend, who's not somebody where you're concerned about them remembering what you said or judging you for it. I know that the support groups, you won't have that experience because everybody's in the same boat, but sometimes we just need that one-on-one where we can really talk about what we're going through with somebody. Come to therapy, don't be afraid.
And even if you think you don't need the therapy, sometimes if you show up in the group, you realize, hey, I'm getting something out of this. I'm talking with people who understand where I'm at. You even learn from each other in the group. Yes?
Here we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Many caregivers are very resistant of taking advantage of the formal in-home respite services because of fear of or concerns of having strangers invading their home or family privacy. How do we go around this resistance and provide quality care to those people with Alzheimer's? Thank you.
That is a great, great question. I've personally encountered that many times with people not wanting strangers in their home. Lee, would you like to speak to this?
Oh, I'll try my best. Obviously, yes, it's a massive problem. But my answer basically is that to find either a social worker, counselor, therapist, somebody that you can develop a degree of trust in. I know that when we reach out to members of our community in particular, we tend to find the ability to reach out to people through churches because our community tends to have a bit of quote unquote faith in our church members. So if that's the route you want to go, then it's about developing that trust in somebody who's going to navigate you or help you to navigate the system and find services that is going to help you. And the bottom line is, I think some of the people have mentioned here, is we're going to need, as a caregiver, you're going to need help. You're going to need respite. You cannot do it by yourself. And I think John has mentioned, we've mentioned here that you need to develop a care team, and that realization has to come. And what resources are out there, you need to access them. And I guess my answer again is just to find someone that you trust who can help you to navigate that service or that system of services.
Good comment, Lee. Creating that care team. Creating a care team is very important. Personally, I've seen my patients, many of them access church organizations, and they feel comfortable because maybe someone from the church is going to come in and help them. So, yes, John.
Dealing with that issue personally myself, it all depends on who it is that's resistant. If it's the person that's impacted resistant, that's one thing. If it's the people caring for that person worried about coming in, having strangers come into their house, that's another. If it's the person who is being impacted, being resentful or distrustful of somebody coming in, sometimes you need to create a ruse, a false premise, in order to get them to drop their guard to bring the person in that's going to care for them. In my case, with my wife, she was extremely resistant bringing anybody in. And what we finally wound up doing was setting up the person who was going to care for her as a housekeeper, going to come in to clean the house and take care of it that way. And then over time, she gradually gained my wife's trust until she became familiar, and then the transition was easy. Okay, if it's the person who is caring for the person who's resistant to having a stranger in the house, that's something that honestly they just have to get over at some point, because most of these caregiver organizations that provide, at least on the professional level, care, those caregivers have generally been vetted through the agency, and the agencies are often bonded, licensed, insured, so that shouldn't be an issue. But it is a different thing if it's the person that's impacted.
And then there's also a lot of technology, right, that can help us feel comfortable in our homes with all types of situations.
And again, if it's the case manager or the coordinator, it's building that trust and making sure that they don't feel judged, because a lot of times you're dealing with feelings of guilt from that caregiver that they're not able to handle the whole situation by themselves. And in many cases, that's just not possible. So we're looking to provide a no judgment zone, but we are there to identify what we can help with and how we can provide that care.
And don't be afraid if you do go the route with an agency and they send you somebody out there and it's just not the right connection. It's okay to ask to have a different person come out.
Absolutely.
Until you find that one person that makes that connection. So it's okay for you to not connect with every single person who walks in your door.
Absolutely, Lisa. And I want to say that I encourage people, you need to create that team, right? And so if you've got a team player who you're not comfortable with, then you need to replace that team player. Fair enough? Yes.
Hi, I want to thank you for this event, first of all. I know you keep saying to reach out to your primary doctor and to your neurologist. My situation is a little weird. My primary doctor, who has been my mom's primary doctor for many, many years, he's in total denial that she has dementia, even though I've taken her to a neurologist, and neurologist has done all the tests to say that she has dementia. But I need the primary caregiver to give me the referrals to, do what I need to do to, keep seeing the neurologist. So, any suggestions?
Well, again,
No, I can't change primary because you know if you make a change for your dementia patient, if you make a change, hell is going to break loose.
okay, so I want to empower you. This is the Empowering Caregiver Conference. I want to empower you. You are the CEO of the team. You get to make the final decisions. And if you need to stick with one of the players on the team, you need to have a real sit-down conversation with the player and say, hey, I know you're part of the team, I want to work with you, but I need you to X, Y, and Z. Have a conversation, but understand your position as the person managing the team and expect that you're going to receive the care that you need. So really it's about how do you see yourself in this team? If you see yourself as being in control, then you are going to make sure that the people that are working on the team are doing what needs to be done in the best interest of your loved one. Next question.
We have some questions over here.
Not so much a question, I just want to say something. My name is Katiana Mazar, and this is Sarah Barker. We're attorneys at Coast to Coast Legal Aid. We just want to add, since the experts are speaking on caregivers taking care of themselves, yes, you're taking care of your loved ones. Do remember to take care of yourself, including you may need certain advanced directives, like a durable power of attorney for yourself, a living will. We don't do last will and testament, but you may need a living will or any other documents that we can assist you with, or any legal issues that you may have. Please contact our office, and we provide free legal services.
Thank you so much for that information. I think the first panel also spoke to that, so thank you. Yes.
She's had her hand up for a very long time.
Oh, Anthony, I think.
She needs a mic first.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Just a quick question. First of all, thank you all very much for the information you're sharing. But the question is, I keep hearing about the federal funds for respite care, and then I think you just mentioned veteran funding as well. How do we access that? Where do I find it? Because it feels like a unicorn that I'm searching for.
Well, you can access the state and federal funds that are set aside for caregivers by calling the Area Agency on Aging. That number is 954-745-9779. And we'll be glad to listen to what your needs are and assist you in that. And one thing I didn't say earlier, but keep in mind, all of our services are meant to help you to keep your loved one at home for as long as it's safe for both you and your loved one. So please reach out, and we'll be glad to help you. And Heidi's going to talk more about the VA.
Anthony, I think we have time for one more question. Heidi, did you want to say something really quick?
No, I was just going to say, if anybody does get like where you don't think that you can qualify, whether it's financially or otherwise, reach out to an attorney, an elder law attorney, because they can actually provide you certain guidances, and we have different ways to be able to get you qualified for those programs. So just don't take no, you don't qualify as the final answer.
Karen, quickly, I just wanted to mention that I couldn't leave here without mentioning that if you do need veterans benefits, please contact my agency, which is the Broward County Elderly and Veteran Services. I mean, I do believe that our veterans are the best if it really comes to getting assistance through the VA. If you need my number, it's 954-357-6.
It's too fast, too fast.
954.
He'll repeat it. He will repeat. No worries. Go ahead.
954-357-6622.
Once again, Lee.
954-357-6622. And if you see me later on, I'll give you my card.
And we actually do have time for a few more questions, so go ahead, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My heart is so full right now. I have so much that I want to say. But first of all, I want to say thank you, because each and every one of you, what you brought to the table today, it touched me, because it's an example of everything that I've going through, and still am dealing with. I've been in the presence of this beautiful woman last year. She was at a conference that I attended, and she gave a lot of good information. I am the caregiver of my mom, who back in 2010 turned 70. And by 2016, at 76, she was going through some confusion, and a lot of things was going on with her. And in 2017, I had to take her to a geriatric doctor where she was diagnosed with mild cognitive disorder. And then the behavior began with, where everyone else here can relate, her denial, her not wanting to give up her independence. And me, I had siblings, but I was the only one, the chosen one, to be able to take care and do everything. I had an assignment to go overseas in 2017. I didn't get to go overseas until 2019, but to make a long story short, before going overseas in 2018, I was blessed to put my mother in an assisted living instead of leaving her home where she was confused about everything. While she was in that assisted living in 2018, the decline began, and I started seeing different things in 2019. Had to come back to the States in 2020 because of COVID. My mom, they shut down the assisted living. Nobody could go in. So we're doing like FaceTime. I see a whole different person, and I'm concerned, I'm worried. My brother's trying to get there. However, June in 2020, they opened up outdoor visits. He went to go see Mom. Mom wasn't the same mom we knew, okay? In 2020, I was able to get my mom to celebrate her 80th birthday. And we did a Zoom call, which everybody was doing Zooms. And then in September of 2020, I was able to get my mom and bring her with me to DC. And then at the end of 2020, I traveled here to start a job in Florida in 2021. And I brought my mom with me, and I'm bringing it to a close here. The area agency of aging, I reached out to them, and I explained my situation, and they were able to help me. Then I was given the number for the Alzheimer's call that Mr. Lee is involved, and there was another woman, Miss Diane, and they were very helpful. And then to hear all these other people that were going through what I was going through. So I want to say I'm so thankful for all the resources that were given to me, even to get my mother on Medicaid, even to get my mother the help we needed with caregiving, because caregivers were so like, they were like a commodity here, like you couldn't get them. It was like people complained about it, you know, but I went through exactly like 12 caregivers before I found the fit community to come into my home, to trust in my home, and we became like family. I even had to go outside and hire someone to pay them so that I can get me some me time. So I'm bringing it around to that self-care, that self-love, because I needed some me time. But then in 2020, my husband suddenly died from complications of COVID. He wasn't vaccinated, and I was traumatized. And then after all of that, it was just me and Mom in the home, and I'm like, Lord, help me. Lord, help me, you know. But as I cried out for help, he sent help. And so I'm here today because I didn't give up. I didn't throw in the towel. I stayed there. God sent the help for me to help Mom. And even in the time where Mom had to go to, I had to start looking for, I had respite care, thank God. And if you can get respite care, use respite care. Back in 2021 in November, my mom was diagnosed to be in hospice. I was like, what is going on, Lord? But here we are, it's 2024, my mom is still in hospice, and she's in an assisted living facility now in Weston. And so I just want to say thank you so much for all you've done. I hope this helps somebody.
I want to thank you again. Thank you, caregivers. I see you. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you. And thank you for also emphasizing how valuable these resources can be to your well-being. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for letting me ask the question, and thank you for all the information that you are giving us. But I have one question. What happened to us, the caregiver, that give our time and life to the person that we love, but putting in hold our life when they just passed? My mother passed 2 months ago. I don't know what to do because I don't know how to go back to the workforce to put myself again, even though I use all my resource on my saving. So I'm gonna be losing everything because I don't know how to move forward. Is any resource about that?
So I want to let Lisa address this. Again, thank you for sharing, and our condolences for your loss.
Yes, thank you for sharing, and thank you for asking the question. I think it's really important for everybody to hear that what happens when we lose somebody, especially when we've been a caretaker is a full-time job. I don't care if you work another job, being a caretaker, an informal caretaker is a full-time job. It uses your mental power, your emotion, your physical, everything. And so when that suddenly comes to a halt, that's a secondary loss. You lost a job. You lost what consumed your days and your mind. When you lose somebody who you love, your whole life and world changes. Everything changes. You find yourself in a new place without them physically here. But a lot of times what can come from loss is growth. And we don't often hear that in the beginning because we challenge it. We say, I don't want to grow from this. I don't want my life to become different in a better way because of what I've been through. And I can tell you because I've been there. I lost my dad suddenly and I lost my brother suddenly and traumatically. So I can tell you that as a grieving person, even though life is changing, it doesn't mean that you stop growing. You can learn to be empathetic and care for others because you have knowledge and empathy that you wouldn't have had if you hadn't been through this experience. So what do you do to get your life back on track? Number one is you be patient with yourself. To the best of your ability, you be kind and patient to yourself. And on the days that you're able to take steps, when you can go and put that job application in or let your old job know, hey, I'm looking to pick up some hours, you take steps. And you make sure that whether it's with the same company or a different company, that you work with someone who's going to understand that sometimes you need to run to the bathroom for a few minutes, have an exit strategy, right? Sometimes I need to take a break during the day. You give cigarettes breaks to people, I should have grief breaks, right? Go take a 5-minute break, take a walk, take some deep breaths, drink some water, get yourself back ready to get into your work environment, and then do it. Rely on your friends and family. Join a support group. Do what you need to do in order to take excellent care of yourself. Self-care matters. And another thing that happens with caregivers after they experience a loss is you've been spending so much time trying to figure out how to take care of somebody else, which is why I stress self-care to caregivers, because it comes second sometimes, and we don't like to see that. But when you've been taking care of your parent and that's been your primary focus, it's going to be challenging at first to figure out, how do I put myself first again? But you have to put yourself first.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. So thank you for those comments. Great advice. And again, I want to take this opportunity to thank this panel for sharing such great information. I am so blessed to be a part of this group, this community. Thank you. What we'd like to do is leave you with what we believe is the most important takeaway from the conversation that we had today. John, can we start with you, please?
Well, speaking my book, go search out your local Alzheimer's Association and take advantage of all the resources and possibilities that we offer. And if you have time and the inclination, volunteer. We need the help.
Thank you, John. Before we go on, Lisa, there was, you were waiting. We're going to take that question. Thank you. We're not hearing you too well. you wanted to say to the lady there in the white?
Department of Veterans Affairs do have a home care department in social work, and there's enough information out there to help you with your family member. As a retiree for the Department of Veterans Affairs, I can tell you, they will assist you.
Beautiful.
With all your benefit needs.
Beautiful. Quickly?
Hello, how are you?
Hi
Good
there.
morning. I think this question is best for Dr. Lee, but I don't know if one of the other panelists wants to speak about it. But I know that in our community, there are specific sectors of our communities, Hispanic, Black, Asian, that have that mistrust of the government. And I wanted to know specifically, how is Broward County trying to bridge that gap? What are the specific programs that they're trying to get out there to maybe reach them, whether it's maybe community centers or something like that, to go ahead and help with that underserved community that might not want somebody specifically in their home, but they have these issues with
So in a nutshell, Liz, did you want to, in a nutshell?
If you remember, one of the things that I stated is we try to meet you when you're healthy and as you're beginning your aging journey, not necessarily your dementia journey or your caregiving journey. And that's why we have Focal Point Senior Centers. We have 5 around the county. We have some of them in historically underserved areas, and we really just want you to come out and see the things that are there and get over the fact that somebody else may look older than you, even though we don't always want to admit that we're getting older ourselves. But what we find is if we can at least get you to know the senior center programs, that then as you start to need more care, then the daycare doesn't seem so bad, and care in the home doesn't seem so bad, but it's getting to know that there is a system out there that is willing and able to help you care for yourself and your loved ones. And that includes Lee's agency, which is our community care elderly lead agency for the county. And so there are many, many options to get in there, but you need to just really find out who we are and come and visit us and get to know us, because we all want to help you.
Yeah, there are many, many different culturally sensitive outreach plans, if you will, outreach resources, many resources where they will even speak different languages correctly.
We have some of the daycares that are mainly, speak Spanish, or we have one that's Portuguese and Brazilian. So
awesome.
If you just ask, we'll be glad to point you in the right direction and then help you start to make those connections.
Awesome, thank you.
Just quickly.
Your takeaway?
No, well, I'll make it my takeaway. I thank Liz for answering that question. But my takeaway basically is that I think us as professionals, or one of my takeaways, us as professionals, I think need to be doing a little bit more in terms of applying what I call a cultural humble or cultural humility type of perspective, where we are kind of like reaching our communities where they're at, and really trying to hear, because we've talked about the individualized type of services, but yes, we do really need to listen to what our communities really need, and it may be different in different cultures. It may be different on an individual basis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for that information. And we're getting the signal that we've got to wrap it up. Lisa, did you want to say something very quick, like a quick takeaway?
Yes.
Just quick.
I think the most important takeaway for what I wanted to present to you today was that self-care matters.
There you
and
go.
that grief matters. So don't be afraid to talk and reach out for support if you need it.
Lee, quick takeaway?
Okay, again, as caregivers, that I mentioned earlier, that my research indicated that family members who are taking care of families kind of tend to see themselves just as family members. I mean, as caregivers, you need to recognize the changes that occur. I think the lady mentioned how her mother has just changed, so which means that her behaviors have changed, which means that what she needs from her family members has changed. So you need to recognize those changes. When you're making those adjustments, understand that you're going to need help and basically reach out for that help.
Lisa, did you want to go ahead and very quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. I do believe that there are resources out there. I think the daycare facilities are probably the most underutilized resource out there to provide respite. You need to contact the ADRC, go on their website. They have a wonderful resource book. There are a lot of us out there, and we love to have your loved ones there. We provide safe places with a lot of great activities, so please look into that.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Liz, very quick, please.
You are not alone. If you need help, call the Area Agency on Aging. It's 954-745-9779.
Heidi.
I'm just cracking up. There's nothing quick in this panel. My takeaway is also about self-care. Make sure that you're planning for yourself as far as estate planning as well. Don't forget yourself. And again, don't take no that you don't qualify for an answer. Seek an elder law attorney to help you get qualified for these benefits.
Awesome. The one takeaway I want you to have is that caregivers, you must identify yourselves. Don't wait for your physician or your loved one's physician to identify you. Identify yourself as a caregiver and understand the well-being of the caregiver directly affects the well-being of the patient. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for visiting with us.
And then